Hello and welcome to the Brothers Take. I'm your host for this week's episode, Adam, and I'm joined by my brothers Chris
Hello.
and Eric.
Hello.
And this week we are going to be discussing, well, it's because of the release of Space Marine 2. I assume none of us have actually played it.
No, checked it out, but I haven't played it.
Right. So, again, it's not a game I have touched yet. I'm definitely going to be getting it at some point. But because that game is in the category of Grimdark, and I suppose that you can kind of lend that term to the genre, or I suppose the franchise of Warhammer, we're going to be discussing games that kind of fit the Grimdark aesthetic. So we're going to be discussing this topic. What does Grimdark actually mean? And what list of games give us that feeling? So if you are enjoying this episode, please give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell for all future content. If you're listening to us on audio platforms, you can touch base on Instagram, Facebook, and X at The Brothers Take to give your take on what constitutes a Grimdark game to you. Without further ado, let's get into this episode. Before we get into the topic, because last week we were talking about the PlayStation 5 Pro, we got a drop for the 30th anniversary edition of the PS5.
Yeah. Yes.
What do you think of that?
I wish that when the PlayStation 5 released, this color scheme was available then, I'd have bought it.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks great. It looks fucking fantastic. Like, I'm a sucker for that kind of 90s nostalgia and stuff. So, it's not something where I'd be like, now I need to buy that. I don't need a second PS5. Like, and also, yeah, maybe if I was going to trade in the one I have, but ultimately, I don't need it. It's totally a commodity. But if you haven't got one yet and you are happening to be buying one around this time, I think you should pick this one up. It looks fucking sick. That's kind of my...
Was there a price drop on it? I'm wondering if it's more
actually.
expensive.
There must...
Yeah, it's like £1,000 or something, you know.
It probably is because it's a limited edition thing as well. They're not going to be... This is not a thing where, like, in 3 years' time, if you want one, you can get it. Like, it's going to be while stocks last type thing, you know?
Was the previous one the 20th anniversary? Where it was the PS4? It was, wasn't it? Because then there was a 25th anniversary one as well.
Wait, this is crazy. How did the PS4 come out for the 20th anniversary? PS5 was out for the 30th. Like, how quickly did the PS2 and PS3 come out? Like, what anniversaries did they have? Well, PS3 must have been a 10th anniversary, right? Maybe there's no edition, but it must have been out for at least.
Oh yeah. I mean,
like,
man, could you imagine a PS3 edition? PS5, like a piano black PS5. I know people are probably eye rolling right now. Scratch magnet. I want that with the Spider-Man font. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, please.
That was the nicest font.
It's the ideal way to play Spider-Man 2. Actually, would be on something with the Spider-Man font saying PlayStation.
Absolutely. What about the controllers? Are you thinking of picking them up?
I did consider that. The only thing that would put me off is I just feel like if I had the controller, which looks sick, that because it doesn't match the console, it would just feel like I'm like, oh, if I got the controller, I'll really want the console, you know, that way, because it'll be so like it just doesn't go with it at all.
I wonder why they wouldn't just sell the faceplates.
I did think that. Well,
then again, it's like they're on a new version of the PS5 now. Yeah.
Why would they sell just the faceplates at the same time as this console? When everyone would then go, great, and I'll just buy the faceplates.
Well, they don't have to sell the faceplates now, but down the line they could sell.
Down the line they might. It won't be the 30th anniversary versions, surely. Like these ones actually say 30th anniversary on them, and there's
won't be that
little 30 in the symbols and stuff. But they could definitely sell the color scheme
Yeah, it
down
doesn't
the
it
line.
actually. It goes like triangle, then 3, and then it does the O as like the 0, and then like
I assume
X
so. Yeah.
square or something. Yeah, so on it.
Yes.
But yeah, no, they could do the color scheme for the faceplates because I mean, like they have, you can get red and blue PS5s, can't you? Which you'd imagine is just the
Yeah.
faceplate.
Yeah, you can
I'd imagine
actually.
that's just like you can get them as the faceplates and swap them out if you wanted. So down the
Yeah.
line, they'd probably do that.
I'm looking at the picture again. Like they look sick.
They do
Like they
look
actually
good.
look sick.
I
They actually
wonder will
look
they discolor? I have the PS1
maybe.
Classic hooked up
Yeah.
to my TV at the moment, and it was just kind of sitting on a shelf for a while.
Right.
And the controllers are a pristine, like the gray, because they were actually tucked away. But the console was out, so now it's that like really strange, almost yellow.
You gotta keep it away from the sun at all
Will
costs.
will the PS5 this edition go that really rotten gray in no time at all?
You don't want that.
You don't want that.
You've just put me off buying it.
If anyone has the 20th edition PS4,
yes.
let us know in the comments if that happens. Like, does it actually discolor? Or maybe you actually have it kept in a box like a smart person.
One of the coolest things
Just wrap some cling film.
about it, though, right? Just purely from a like marketing packaging standpoint, is have you seen the picture of the box?
I haven't
No.
actually seen the box yet.
The box is incredible. The box is a remake of the original PlayStation box.
Okay.
Like
Nice.
as in the placement of the console in the picture. They have it lined down for it. Where the logo is, where the word PlayStation is. The box is just like they nailed it. They nailed it. You gotta look it up. It's great.
Does it open up any kind of fancy way?
I don't know that. It's
'Cause
literally just a picture of what the outside of the box looks like.
Yeah,
Just
because the
front
boxes
picture.
for... I know the packaging for the other anniversary PS4s, there was certainly a lot more thought into it. Remember when you were opening the Xbox Series X, you kind of felt like, oh, these guys
Yeah, it was
actually
lovely.
kind of care.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah, the anniversary consoles tend to be that way. I wonder if this... Because that PS5 box was ridiculous.
It was a bit. It was like, yo, this is like.
What do you
this
got
is
there, a
expensive
couch?
This is a this is an expensive piece of equipment. I feel like it should be like there should be something either side of this. It kind of just felt like it was just like just in a bag in a box. Like, it was just. It's like this is lucky it made it really. I loved setting up. Like like setting up the PS5 was really cool for the first time. It really felt like a new console experience because the layout was different. It looked different. There was all this. The DualSense felt different. You know, all that stuff was great. But the taking it out of the box was just. It was like, man, I feel like I didn't spend a lot of money on this. And I fucking did.
I know, yeah, they definitely made cuts there. With the new edition, the only unfortunate thing of it, like, we have like the launch PS5.
Mm.
I don't know if you've seen much about the PS5 Slim, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's what this version is, and it's definitely... Sony, for some reason, when they make the Slim variant, it's always kind of a cheaper product. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, like the idea was to cut costs so they could get the price down, but the price didn't go down.
Yes.
And I'm wondering
Yeah,
if this
well.
edition, you kind of want the Pro variant. I think is probably going to be the nicer console, but now you're talking crazy money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, again, there's going to be collectors out there. Do you know, for some reason, this one, whatever price this thing is, it could still be a fucking ridiculous price. And I'm reminded of, do you remember we were talking about like when they were remaking The Last of Us Part 1, and I was bothered by that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked about The Last of Us Part 2 remastered, and I was like, yeah, that doesn't bother me. And you were like, what the how could you not be bothered by that, but you are bothered by the first one or whatever? And in a similar way here, I'm like, if it costs a bit extra for the 30th anniversary, it doesn't bother me as much as the pricing of the PS5 Pro. I think it's because the reason for this is it's a collector's thing. And if you're a collector, you're gonna get it, and if not, you're not. It's not going to be most people's first console. There will be a
Unlimited
select
run,
few, like,
right?
and a limited run. Yeah, it's a special commodity thing that also does what the PlayStation does, but really it's a collector's thing. Versus the PS5 Pro being the sort of oh, this is the real way to game, and also you need to remortgage your house.
You reckon this was released? This was always planned to be released or announced at the time that they announced it, or do you think the timing of it is a bit kind of let's dampen the hatred we're receiving a little bit for the PS5 Pro announcement?
Yeah, I did think about. To be honest, I'm surprised they didn't announce them both at the same time.
I
Yeah,
would
'cause I
have
kind of
done that.
Yeah, you'd kind
Yeah.
of figured that if it was ready to be announced in time, they would do them
announce
together,
both.
right?
Because I mean, it's coming out this December, so you do
Yeah.
have to let people know and start getting the pre-orders in anyway. So that event, like if you had showed the PS5 Pro and it's like, and one more thing, and then you do the 30th anniversary thing, like yeah, the conversations would just have them coupled.
Like, was there a pre-announcement to this, or was this kind of almost shadow dropped? Sort of just like
Just dropped online,
here's a
blog post.
Here's a tweet, here's a post, or whatever.
Yeah, blog post, and there is a video version of them showing you the consoles and showing the minute detail.
Yeah, I just feel like, honestly, I actually barely looked at it. I'm not gonna lie. I am sorry.
No, it's okay.
Because
you're like unless it looks like the PS2, I feel nothing.
no.
That would be nice.
Because I thought it was just like another post to do with the PS5 Pro. Because I suppose because it was just sort of shadow dropped. It was just like, boop, there's the announcement for the 30th anniversary. I kind of thought I just scrolled past because I thought that was the PS5 Pro.
Yeah.
So I didn't really look at it. So I will look at it after this episode. But yeah, I think they should have absolutely announced that.
With it, yeah. I think so too.
With it, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
The other thing
30th
is
edition.
They did have, and I saw some journalists in that were seeing it in person. So that takes a bit of prep, doesn't it? Like to say that we're going to have it available here at this location. We're going to invite journalists. That seems a bit not out of the blue. So maybe they are just really silly about when they decide to announce things.
But they did that with the Pro too.
With the Pro, yeah.
When people are showing up, it's like, here's the Pro.
I think
here's the 30th anniversary edition.
So I was watching
a
clip from Waveform, which is I don't know if you've ever watched Marquez Brownlee, MKBHD.
No, I don't think so.
So their podcast Waveform, it was just like this mention of the PS5 Pro, which I missed when exactly I got the kind of afterwards. I didn't watch the thing, did not launch, but supposedly it was announced the same day, or that like launch was the same day as Apple's event for the newest iPhone. And these guys, they're like tech reviewers, right? And Marquez immediately was like, "Oh, so it's not good then?" Because there seems to be like this track record of if you're going to announce it the same day that the biggest tech company in the world is going to announce their flagship product,
right?
You're trying to like get attention away from you. All the journalists are there. You know what I mean?
Right. All eyes on them.
Yeah. So it's like, well, so immediately he was like, all right, so it's not good then. And then they got into because he missed the whole thing. That's
interesting.
And just started talking about it, and he's like, oh, okay. Yeah. It is interesting. It's like, but why would you schedule your event to be on the same day that all the other headline tech journalists are going to be talking about the latest iPhone?
Yeah. It's do you know what though? The iPhone thing is a bit strange. Sorry now, not to get off topic too much, but it's like, and I think they're cool phones, but like they come out so often that I don't think it's even a big deal when there's a new one. I don't know why everyone would be there to report on that.
At this stage, it's like, well, I suppose
it's not like there's a 5-6 year a tech generation gap where when they announce the new one, it's like, holy shit, there's a new one, like, and we got to go see what it is and what it's going to be and what it can do.
Yeah.
It's literally every year.
Yeah. Well, I think with their event, it's like it's like that's the major product announcement, but there's always other things announced.
So there's could be surprises.
But either way, you do not want to hold your event on the same day.
Oh no, I'm sure not.
Yeah.
But like,
it just seems a bit odd.
Sometimes these things just happen too, though, right? Like it could be a scheduling thing, or there is no other time to do these things, or like I'm sure it wasn't like they looked up when are Apple doing it. Yeah, let's do it that day. I'm sure it was more like they scheduled it and then went, fuck, that's Apple's day.
Yeah, but
that's probably more likely.
this is a thing that you can, like, because it was a video, right? They just release it.
True, yeah. They could have just said, "Well, hold off on that for a few minutes," and
Yeah.
all right, just hold off on that for one day.
Kind of like that Sum 41 guy doing his comic book or his book or whatever, right? You know, he's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll change
He's like,
the date.
I have a big announcement coming September 5th. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're the new singer of Linkin Park." Do you know what? I'm gonna announce it a different day. Do you hear about that, Eric?
No.
So when the news was out that like Linkin Park were going to be announcing something on September 5th, and obviously now we know what all that is. But in the lead up to it, like the singer from Sum 41, and Sum 41 have since like they've broke up now. They're not touring anymore. They had their last tour, not in a bad way. They decided it was time to stop Sum 41, and he put out a big announcement coming September 5th. Watch this space kind of thing, and everyone is like, holy shit, you're the new singer for Linkin Park. Like, and to be fair, they had enough kind of somewhat evidence or background to put with it. In fact, like that he did perform with them at the In Memory of Chester concert, and then he like Sum 41 brought Mike Shinoda out during like a Reds or Leeds festival to play Faint.
Right.
And he obviously sang on Faint then as well. So like there was enough breadcrumbs for people to be like, oh my god, like they just broke up Sum 41. Why would they do that? It's because he's committing to a whole new band, you know? And then so he got so many like messages about it and stuff, and then he just came out with, lads, relax. I'm not the singer like a park. I'm just putting out a book for fuck's sake. Like, you know what? I'm gonna change the announcement date. Clearly it's not a good day for it.
See? Smart thing to do. Change your day.
Now, it was a smart thing to do. When you know that it's like, oh, there's huge news coming in the same industry I'm in. You know what I mean? Where it's like we know we have the same audience, like for the large part.
Well, audience no, journalists yes, perhaps. Like there'll be a lot of like tech journalists. That are.
Oh no, sorry, I
oh, you meant from the music side of things?
In the music side of things, they have the same audience. Yeah. So I wonder if anyone is like planning on picking up the 30th anniversary console. I thought it looked sick.
It does look good.
If I didn't have one, I'd be getting one. That's the thing.
I do wish though we could start seeing anniversary editions of like PS2, PS3. I hope they are
in that style.
Yeah, they're coming along. That would be sick. Even if there was like a special launch thing where it was like, could you imagine like the next console is they have their plain design, whatever that is, and then they'll have like a PS1 version, PS2 version, PS3 version, like at launch. Yeah. I mean, I know it'd be a bit weird having two blacks, but like, you know, some
it'd be annoying having to buy all of them, wouldn't it? Yeah.
You'd have to.
You'd have to, like, you know, you'd look at the picture
one for every TV.
Go, yeah, but you'd look at the picture on screen and you go, well, they look sick beside each other. Fuck.
Yeah.
Gonna have to fit them in the sitting room. Somehow.
Would they do it now? Like, let's say at PlayStation 6, right? This is not grimdark at all. Anyway, right? So
we're getting there.
PlayStation 6.
You're getting darker the more you're talking about the future, right?
And then we have your PS1 version, PS2, PS3. Is there then the PS4 and PS5 versions of the PlayStation 6?
No.
And then you get the 7. You do the 1 to 6 versions?
No. We only want as far as 3. We're not nostalgic about 4 yet. 4 isn't around long enough for us to go, remember 4. You know? We're only nostalgic about up to 3, Eric.
Yeah, I'm still playing PS4 games, like, come on.
I was just wondering.
So many years to be.
Ask the question.
I thought it was really cool. And it sold out actually before I had a chance, because I was like, oh, actually, as a collector's thing, that is really cool. Bring Me the Horizon had released like special editions of their album online, and one of them looks like a PS1 game. Like that's the way the case is done.
Oh yeah.
Even when you open it, the disc they've put their post-human it's a P and a H, but they've put it in the same way as PlayStation, like in the original. And then it comes with a game booklet.
Remember those?
I was just like, that's really cool marketing and everything. I think that's really sick. And the design on the disc then looks like Final Fantasy X. Like it's really, I don't know how they haven't been just done for plagiarism at this point, but how much homaging they do. But I think it's cool.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it's okay to homage. Yeah. But anyway, moving on to games. The topic of this week is looking in the category of grimdark, right? The genre of grimdark because of the launch of Space Marine 2. Now, when I post this topic to use, I don't want to get into what does grimdark mean, right? What does that?
That's a little bit, though.
Well,
right?
a little bit, but I think it'd be more helpful to.
I just think there's a large audience that have no idea what the fuck that is.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll give I'll give the dictionary definition here, right? Of grimdark.
Oh God! Right.
But you'll see
Stuff
what I
that's
mean.
really dark and grim.
So grimdark is a subgenre of speculative fiction with a tone, style, or setting that is particularly dystopian, amoral, and violent.
Right.
That is what the description of it is. But the term grimdark came from, or at least became popular because of Warhammer 40,000. So this is where this is the
where
tie-in with
Space Marine
Space
2 and Link comes in. Yes, yeah.
Because it had on the rule book, there was that subtitle in the grim darkness of the far future. There's only war, so that's where that grim dark term comes from.
Right.
So as a huge Warhammer fan, I really want this particular genre. Every time I come across something that's like it, it just reminds me of Warhammer. So generally, that's my entry point in when I'm like, if I see something, I'm like, oh my god, it's like Warhammer, and I don't mean it from it's like Space Marines in battle or whatever. Or at least that's not what that means to me. So I thought it would be interesting to explore what does grimdark mean to each of us, and using games as an example. So this isn't a discussion about, okay, if you want more Space Marine, play this. Because honestly, if you want more Space Marine, go play Gears of War.
Just go play Space Marine and Gears of War, yeah.
This is more about the aesthetics of it and the feeling. And not necessarily the feeling of being a Space Marine, but could you imagine just being a regular person in that world? What does that feel like?
Right, fucking hell. Heavy. I actually, as well, because I was looking up, I was like, what the fuck is grimdark? Like, as in, how do I differentiate it from other subgenres and things like that?
Yeah.
And I was trying to find the quote now because I didn't want to misquote it, and I can't even remember who said it, and I can't fucking find it anywhere. But when I was looking, someone described it as anti-Tolkien fantasy, basically. It's like the opposite of Tolkien-esque fantasy, which I thought was really, really interesting. In that Tolkien stories are full of darkness, but there's always hope. And hope usually prevails. And it seems that from what I've been looking into, grimdark is like, it's really dark and there's no hope. It's hopeless.
Yeah,
it seems to be. Like, there's not going to be a happy ending, maybe.
Yeah, and I would say that where Tolkien's story is very much a Christian story. Like, the Lord of the Rings is a Christian story. Grimdark is a nihilist. So that's a nihilist genre. So it's although there's gods, it's godless in the end.
Yeah, the gods don't love you, and it means nothing.
And even if you fight for them, it's like you're not in a Tolkien's world. You're guaranteed salvation through the Undying Lands. With this, you're not guaranteed anything.
If Lord of the Rings was grimdark,
when
Pippin says, "I never thought it would end like this." And then Gandalf would say, "And there's nothing after this." Just so, whereas the difference is he actually comforts him in knowing that there is something after this, and it's actually a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
but isn't this
a path we almost take, right? Sorry, go on.
Isn't it though in Lord of the Rings? So we had to mention it.
Did you mean Skyrim?
Yeah, which is similar, right?
Same thing. Isn't that like the?
I was wondering if that was going to get a mention.
Yeah, it has to.
Oh, of course. Like the humans and the hobbits and essentially everything that's not elf kind. Don't they not go to the Undying Lands? So when like Gandalf is telling Pippin, fucking hell, it's telling Pippin about the Undying Lands, isn't he? Like, isn't that so nice? But also, he's kind of like lying to him. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. But I thought it was that like only certain beings get to go to the Undying Lands, and the hobbits are not one of them.
He's like comforting himself. He's that's not the end for me.
Yeah, for me at least.
For me at least. And it just goes on about all the stuff he's looking forward to. But anyway, yeah. So sorry. So I don't know if that does ring true, but from what I read, And
I would
it
say
seems
so.
to make sense
Yeah.
to me that Lord of the Rings is not grimdark fantasy,
No.
but there are plenty of
Not
fantasies.
even dark fantasy.
No.
Not even dark fantasy. Let me wrestle with that for a moment.
Because
Whatever do you
I was
mean?
thinking about this, right? So Grimdark, for me personally, anyway, when I'm thinking about it, has that sort of I would see it when there is that very like religious iconography sort of to it, that very gothic aesthetic to its architecture. This is when I start to get a little bit like the Grimdark, and then it's that that hopelessness, and usually has like some form of religion, usually in Grimdark. But it's like
Interesting.
the most severe kind of essentially, remember that time when all the religious people were psychotic and killing each other? Yeah, that's what this is right now. Like, that's what you're in. You're in that world where people are flagellating themselves for the God Emperor of Warhammer 40k. Or if you take the game Blasphemous, which is based on Spanish Christianity, and everyone is worshipping the miracle, but because they technically all sin, the miracle keeps like turning them into monsters and giving them like the worst version of what they prayed for. So people go, "Oh, well, that person was clearly not holy enough, so I'm going to go more holy to worship the miracle." To the point that the main character you play as, which is known as the penitent one, has to put an end to the miracle because it's just fucking everyone up. It's just the land is like turmoil. Or Bloodborne and Dark Souls, the same.
Blasphemous is a fucking great example of
That's
that
a
kind
great
of
show. Is that the side
aesthetic.
scroller one?
Yeah.
That's the side scroller one. I actually watched like a whole breakdown of the story of Blasphemous.
It sounds fucking insane. It sounds amazing. I remember how it looked, but I didn't know anything about the story of it. That sounds incredible. And actually, I was thinking of, and then as you were talking, Eric, it kind of solidified more. I was like, okay, maybe I am on the right path then in terms of what I would associate with this genre in terms of games. Dante's Inferno was one that came to my mind as sort of a grim, dark game, maybe more so a grim, dark setting, because it's not necessarily. Well, no, the world is pretty fucked too. Like all of his flashbacks are like of a really hopeless crusade, basically. Like even though yes, if you put it in the context of human history, things do get better. As in, if you look at where we are now versus the Crusades. And like some people would say, things are worse than ever now. It's like, no, they're not.
Depends on the side of the world you're on, I think.
Yeah. It depends on the side of the world. Depends on like so many things. But in the context of that game and what's going on in that world, and then being in hell, literally, and spiraling further into hell, and circle just being like people purely damned, and like there's no
and the
hope,
amount
really,
of people there in hell to the point that you're almost playing that game going,
does anyone make it out?
Yeah, does everyone just go to hell then? Because we never got the sequel, so we have no idea how to save ourselves. So
yeah, I don't think they ever could have made a sequel, really. I
know
there
was plans, but I don't know how they could do a trilogy out of that.
I don't know how they could do it, really. I get the
you fight God at the end. That's how all these things go.
Yeah.
No, but like from a discussion standpoint, that literary trilogy is really good. But like from a gameplay standpoint, like hell is going to be where it's at. Like, and then after that, it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be less combat the further up you go.
Yeah, Dante's Inferno.
The story is not about like fighting things, you know.
That's a game that wasn't received well, and obviously that's why we never really got a sequel to it, and eventually the studio was disbanded. But that's a game that really I latched onto, and it was purely just because of that. I would consider that fairly witty. It has grimdark aesthetics, for sure. So that's two games that have like. There's definitely
Blasphemous and Grimdark.
Yeah, there's Dante's Inferno.
Yeah,
there's definitely a religious kind of representation there, but and I think even some later examples that we might have is that there's still going to be religious elements to it. So Grimdark has to have, I think, some form of it's like war meets belief And it doesn't have to be a specific religion. I think those particular games touch on obviously Christianity, but it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's something that presents hope to you, even though it's hopeless to pursue it.
Right. Yes, and it becomes like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like an excuse for atrocity.
Yeah.
Like almost like it allows for atrocity because there's the promise of hope, like there's the promise of escape at the end of it all, but in the end there is nothing.
Yeah, and your journey towards whatever that is has to be like sacrifice, not a day-to-day sacrifice, but actual blood sacrifice, whether that's your own or other people's.
Jesus Christ. It's fairly dark,
It's pretty grimdark.
Well, that's why actually, when watching, going a little bit away now, when I was watching the first Dune movie, the kind of the newer one done by Denis Villeneuve, and there's a moment where they cut to the world of like the elite military of the Emperor, known as the Sardaukar, and it's just raining, and this guy's just doing weird fucking Viking Mongol sort of chanting with his throat chanting. And all the guys are standing there, and then there's these other people who are like, they're in a crucifixion position, upside down, and all their throats are slit, and all the blood is just like seeping into these bowls that then they like mark the Sardaukar. That's not necessarily like Christian, but it's like following the Emperor itself, a little bit like 40K, is the right path. So like that to me looked like very grim dark kind of moment. That actually reminded me of almost like if the Astra Militarum of 40K were going to war, it's like, yeah, all right, so we get our little
This is the most badass thing you've ever said.
we're getting the people, we cut them, and then we mark the soldiers before they go fight some orcs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, so you can kind of see that the influences like creep into other, like no one would say that Dune is a grimdark genre, movie. But that scene for sure was like, there's certainly elements of it. But Eric, you mentioned off podcast probably the perfect game that sums up this genre to me.
Yeah,
if you can mention that game.
Oh, I like. Was it A Plague Tale: Innocence?
A Plague Tale: Innocence. I remember when I was playing that. There's one scene in particular where I'm like, okay, this is. I'm basically playing a Warhammer game, right? Do you have a scene that like really stands out to you where it's like, okay, this is
well,
Grimdark?
I think the scene you're referring to. I mean, the whole game.
It's pretty grim.
There's so many scenes that you could say, but I think the one that you're referring to, it takes place in a church. And am I right? And
not the scene for me, but there's certainly tons of scenes.
Like the people are kneeling and they're chained and they're praying and bleeding.
It's pretty cool.
Fit into these like funnel things.
Yeah.
So that the blood can feed the rats because they're keeping the rats alive because they're using them. Like, oh man, what a fucked up game.
It's pretty grim.
There's so many bits though. Like I did like the crawling through all the bodies.
Oh, like when you're like underneath
across the wasteland. No, when you're literally, you have to walk on top of corpses.
Through the battlefield. Yeah.
That's the moment for me.
That is just
the moment you come out of
every direction is death. Like,
yeah, the moment you come out of. Well, actually, you're following this aqueduct and it looks kind of pretty or whatever, and then you see this vast battlefield, medieval battlefield. There's like burnt out trebuchets. There's crows feeding on bodies, and it's like as far as the eye can see, it's just bodies. That to me was like, that's the grimdark aesthetic to me at least. It's like this combination of like medieval mixed with those like kind of religious beliefs mixed with World War I. Because what we see in that moment, right? I know obviously there's been horrendous battles throughout history, but we have no idea of what that looks like. We have no photographs of that.
No, we
So
only have
I think
artistic depictions.
yeah. So I imagine that's probably unrealistic to see that many dead medieval warriors piled on top of each other. But that is a scene that we would see from the World Wars.
Yeah.
So it's like taking this modern horror and smashing it with like medieval, the Dark Ages essentially. If you can combine Dark Ages with the early like World Wars, then that to me is kind of the grimdark aesthetic.
Man, that game, anytime it gives you like just a moment of hope, like they're like if there's lightness at all, you nearly get to a point where you go, I don't trust it. Like this is not, you know what I mean? Like you end up getting so used to it that like you do get to a point where it's like they're having a good time. Something horrible is about to happen, you know?
Yeah. The second one is actually probably less grimdark than the first one.
Yeah,
I think.
I would say so too.
Oh.
Which is what I didn't like the second one as much. Now, I still, to this day, and I will never ever unveil what it is here on this podcast because I want people to experience it. I will never ever go, let's spoiler talk the second game. I still take it as one of the greatest endings I've ever played to a game.
Pretty good.
Just the way it was crafted. I just thought, and maybe, and possibly someone will play it and go, Chris, you bigged that up way too much. And part of it was probably because the rest of the game was so underwhelming that by the time it got to the ending, it was like, wow. I remember calling it a must-play experience, the ending of Plague Tale Requiem. But the game as a whole, yeah, it doesn't quite match the feeling of the first game.
No, the first one very much like, I mean, it starts off with the innocence of the characters being robbed, as in because they have to flee their home, and then as it goes on, her innocence gets robbed more and more from having to then kill someone, to then finding it very easy to kill people, to then forcing the rats to have to kill people, to also like going across entire so very
she kind of has
arc.
her story arc kind of reminds me a little bit of the likes of the Stark children in Game of Thrones.
Very much so.
Sansa in particular, which is a character who always
had a horrible time.
Yeah, well, she always thought like, oh well, I'm a princess, I'm gonna marry this like beautiful prince, and I'm gonna become a queen, and it's like that's just the fairy tale life that everyone wants. And then it's like reality hits in, and it's like she very quickly gets robbed of her childhood and becomes
broken.
She becomes not quite the other queens, but you can see through her how the other queens got to where they are. How why they're so brutal is true that character. So you see that a little bit with, however, Plague Tale is a little bit more hopeful, but still not full of hope, because even the end of it you're kind of like, okay.
I don't think there's any hope in a Plague Tale. It's all false hope. There's no you look at it going, there's, and this is before you see any sequels or anything. You're like, this can't end well. There is no happy ending to these characters' story. It can't. And I'm really curious, because I do think there'll be more. I'm really curious where they're going to go with the story. Like, but I do hope they get back to that. That's not saying there is plenty of dark shit in the second one,
Right.
And I think they more go for everything seems. The second one is more like Midsummer. You know that movie, Midsummer?
Okay. I haven't seen it, but I get maybe what you're trying to get.
What I mean is like everything seems happy, and that's disturbing.
Like BioShock Infinite to BioShock 1.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's fucking fantastic. Plague Tale Innocence is like the original BioShock.
Right.
It's dark. It's obviously dark, and there is no hope, and it's and the Requiem is more like Infinite, where it's like everything's bright and happy, everything's great, woo.
Yeah.
But it's like, but there's something seriously wrong with these people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you before you even see that there's something wrong, you get this unsettling feeling of something's not right here. Like, these people are being way too nice, and I played the first one, so I'm already like, no, alarm bells are ringing in my head.
That's quite
maybe
interesting.
It's all
though.
in my head, right?
Yeah, that's quite interesting. What a game experience can kind of do to a player, which is that idea of like if you think about the people that would have gone to those, any war, I guess, but when they come back from it.
Mm.
And it's like they just go to do their grocery shopping and they're like, I don't trust anyone in here. It's like you've now experienced that, not to the same extent, obviously, but it's like metaphorically as a player, you've played through the first one, you don't trust anyone, you come to the second one. Actually, maybe they should have presented everyone's just fine. And it's just dealing with your paranoia.
Yeah, I got to a point where I actually thought that is what they were going to do.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, it's a little bit cliched and like the
It does
villains,
get cliched cheesy.
the villains are the villains and they're not good villains. Like they're pale in comparison to the villains from Plague Tale Innocence. They feel really like
Tacked on.
yeah. There's a moment where it kind of I don't know why I'm making all these weird comparisons today. Do you remember like you watch like the Disney movies? Like, say you watched Pocahontas or Hunchback of Notre Dame, these kind of ones, right? The big classic ones. And then they made like sequels that were straight to video.
Oh yeah.
And they'd always have these weird, like, a slight tonal, and a slight tonal shift. And they'd have a villain that doesn't feel like an iconic villain, but just feels like I'm the villain of the second one that went straight to video. That's kind of that's kind of what the villains in the Plague Tale Requiem were like. That's probably the weirdest way I could have described that.
So basically, play the first one if you want the grimdark aesthetic. Don't maybe play the second one if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, second one's not so grimdark. Second one is just, but still good.
Very good.
Is
a higher fantasy, I'd say. It's kind of more. The second one's more dark fantasy, I'd say.
Yeah. Okay. What does that mean? This was said earlier too.
Dark fantasy.
Is dark fantasy just like obviously there'd be a lot of crossover.
I think Demon Souls and Bloodborne are dark fantasy.
No, I think they're grimdark.
I was about to say they're grimdark.
Dark fantasy is a fantasy setting that's a little bit more horror leaning.
Okay.
True.
But can grimdark not be that?
Yeah, grimdark can contain it, but you don't have to have the hopelessness as necessarily the or the dystopian future doesn't have, or it doesn't have to be future, but dystopian society doesn't have to be at the core of a dark fantasy.
But I think
there's certainly crossover for sure.
What I've gathered, most of the Soulsborne games, not all of them, certainly not, like, I don't think Sekiro falls into this. I don't think Elden Ring falls into this. But I think the Dark Souls games or the Demon Souls games and Bloodborne match that description.
They are quite grimdark.
They're post-apocalyptic.
Sure. They don't for me, but that's what I think is quite interesting about the topic is that, like, it can... There's going to be certain things that you're going to be like, oh, that's definitely Doom Grimdark, or that one's like... I think what classifies it to me is certainly what I kind of was just mentioned there was that kind of combination of the Dark Ages and like the horrors of World War One. Right, and the various different normal people in that society, because both of those are eras, because the Dark Ages led to the Crusades, and obviously we all know what World War One was, but both of those felt like kind of unnecessary wars.
Right.
There's going to be deeper reasoning for why those wars actually happened, but to the average person, there's no clear, oh, this is what we're fighting for in either of those situations, and yet then the regular people are suffering, whether it's food shortages, there's plagues, sickness, and all that, maybe even killing your neighbors, and everything the world just feels hopeless. So I guess I don't get that from a Demon Souls experience, and I get more of this is a horror fantasy.
Right.
Oh yeah, it probably would be. They would be more horror. Okay, yeah, no, I see what you mean. That they are more horror, dark fantasy. There is some grim dark in some of its storytelling of characters.
Yeah.
Like I know in Dark Souls 3, there's a side character you meet, and if you do everything right, you get to marry them. But your marriage is that this cult has captured them, knocked them out, pretty much, or put them to sleep, lie them on an altar, put a drape over the face, and then to complete your marriage, you have to stab them in the face with a sword. And then that's how you unlock one of the endings of Dark Souls 3. Like, like, and every character you meet talks about how hopeless your kind of journey is. But yeah, I do get what you mean, that it is closer to that kind of horror dark fantasy. So dark fantasy, I suppose, for Chris is
Ah,
Castlevania. Castlevania, I think, is dark fantasy.
sure.
Like
Dracula.
Dracula, the people live in fear.
Is that not gothic fantasy?
Oh fucking hell! There's gonna be crossover with all these things.
Yeah,
right?
no, dark fantasy. I think Eric's right there. So gothic fantasy and dark fantasy, I think, are very similar.
Right.
So again, it definitely correlates again with the Dark Ages. People living in fear of a monster. So, and the hero, the Witcher is also probably a bit dark fantasy as well.
Can I? Okay.
So like,
Can I
there's probably a supernatural / science gone bad kind of
thing to it.
Yeah.
Society still exists. Society can still well function.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
But
want to throw.
if you're on the road and you meet a goblins, you're probably going to get fucked.
Yeah, I want to throw a spanner in the works.
Right,
All
right.
Okay.
Because when I was reading up, and this is not to say that this person was right or anything, and I'm raging, I can't fucking find where I found it. But the person who described Grimdark as anti-Tolkien, right, the opposite of Tolkien fantasy, went on to describe George R. R. Martin's work as Grimdark, right?
Yeah.
But from what we're talking about right now, it sounds to me more like that would be dark fantasy, not Grimdark. Because it's a song like the Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire, whatever it's actually called, the series, is a functioning society. However, there is like no moral characters in it, like, and everyone. I don't know which one it is actually. Is what I'm saying now.
I would have counted that as dark fantasy, to be honest.
It is an interesting one. I think there's probably a crossover into both of those genres. There's certainly it certainly is more grim dark than it is dark fantasy, only because the horror is not the core of it. Hopelessness is actually the core of it. So that would to me would put it more into the grim dark, just because if you were, just imagine yourself being a normal person in that world.
So then in that case, and this is my full circle moment, I would then still argue that the Bloodborne and the Dark Souls games are grimdark. I think hopelessness is the theme of those games.
You could, yeah. I'm just saying that I would put them into the. I'm not saying like there's a right or wrong answer here, because I think there's absolutely crossover. Eric just mentioned the grimdark moment in Dune, which is absolutely neither of those things. So
absolutely, yeah, that's true.
I think there certainly is crossover, which is kind of what I wanted to get out of the conversation was I didn't want it to be these are grimdark games, but rather
just when did you like grimdark moments? It's more like that Dune thing that Eric was talking about.
It's like grimdark moments. It's like if you could grab that and encapsulate that and make a full game out of it, then you would have a grimdark game. So
right. Well,
go ahead.
Can I throw one out there that might be a weird one, and it's obviously because I'm so biased and just love it so much, but I think it's more the feeling I get when we talk about like that hopelessness and what grimdark is kind of about at its core. And while it's lacking certainly a lot of the other elements we're talking about, I think the setting of Midgar in the original Final Fantasy VII, and more specifically in the original Final Fantasy VII, in how it is conveyed, I think is a grimdark setting. I think it's an incredibly hopeless, gloomy, people are going about their day work knowing that their world is ending, and like it all means nothing. And just there is no...
But do they know that the world's going to end?
I think so. I think in the same way as we know that the world is going to end.
But there's
and
a
we're
lot...
all not doing that much about it.
But there's a lot of people who think that's a conspiracy, right?
But do they really? Or are they just like, it's not convenient for me to believe what people are saying, so I'm looking for an alternative point of view.
I would agree.
Myself.
I would classify that one as cyberpunk.
Oh yeah, but I think there's a lot of crossover.
I think cyberpunk is I think definitely would be a dystopian society where
Yeah,
um
which is
where
hopeless.
corporations rule,
Yeah.
and it's all about high tech low life.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
Whereas
an interesting. That's not interesting. Cyberpunk
I
high
actually
tech low
take.
life and is uh your life is kind of miserable. So like in Midgar, they're like
Yes.
in the lower sex. I get what you're saying, Chris.
Yes. Yeah.
Their life is miserable, so they will find things to distract them. So then they are unaware of all the bad shit happening. So wall market, they go and they distract themselves
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
with all the stuff. So cyberpunk, very much that. Like people are like, my life's crap, so I'm going to go to a like in. I don't know if they do it much in. I suppose they don't do it in Blade Runner because they shoot all the robots. But like that idea of going to the brothel to rent out the android for whatever
Mhm.
things you're wanting to do, like, uh, would be quite cyberpunky
Mm-hmm.
because your life is shit. So you're going to do this to make your life better, and then the people at the top do whatever they want and get away with it. Altered
Yeah.
Carbon actually is a very good. The first season is a very good example of cyberpunk.
I think you're definitely touching on kind of similar ideas, Chris. But it's almost as if they're tackling a similar idea, but in
Yeah.
two different ways.
Yeah, to me, it seems the differences between, like really deep cyberpunk and then grimdark fantasy are largely surface level.
Well,
As
I think with
they
Cyberpunk,
look different, but they're getting at the same feeling though.
perhaps, and I think that does kind of really set them apart as well. Like, so I think in a cyberpunk genre, it's almost like the embrace of technology, and that technology will take us to like the next era, right?
Technology instead of religion.
Maybe,
Almost.
but I think Grimdark is actually in opposition to pushing forward, unless it's for the greater cause or whatever the case may be. But there is there's more of a holding on to original ideas, and you must suffer for them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's a question I have for you now, right?
And
About
I
a
love this.
movie that came out that I think
This
we
is
were all
insane.
like either excited. I can't remember really what our feeling was, but I remember Adam was collecting some of the graphic novels for this. So when he heard that they were going to make a movie, he was super excited, and the movie got released, and it was nothing
I
like the
was
graphic
just
novels.
thinking of the same thing.
Priest?
Priest.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the western kind of outback areas are just
God,
outland.
make that into a game.
Priest the game?
But the actual city itself that we barely get to see, which is probably more interesting than the rest of society outside of the city, right?
Are you talking about in the film or the comic book?
The film.
Oh, right.
Oh shit! Sorry, I thought we were talking about the comic.
The comic book is dark fantasy, dark gothic fantasy, I'd say.
Yeah.
Is it though?
Yeah. 100%.
Is it not that in the West it was grimdark, and then in the future it was cyberpunk?
You could certainly let the Grimdark bleed into it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was the question.
You wanted
I was
to
gonna
talk
ask.
about the fucking movie with Paul Bettany.
Yeah, well, mainly the city lifestyle.
Yeah.
Which is dark fantasy, cyberpunk, or grimdark.
Oh.
Yes.
I don't know.
Maybe that's why it's not good, Eric. It didn't focus.
fully commit to any particular.
I am entertained by that movie just as much as I am entertained by AVP Requiem.
I am happy for you.
Now there is a dark movie.
And fucking grim. But yeah, I guess there seems to be that there's certainly, and this is why these are all classed as subgenres, right?
Oh yeah.
They're-
Yeah.
They're all subgenres. They're not all major genres, and there will be crossover between all of them.
Yeah, one thing influences
So
the
yeah,
next.
so people will be like, I think that's a that, or I think that's a that, and it maybe just will harken down to, it's like, well, actually, there could be elements of both, and it's just the thing that you're latching onto that draws you to that particular experience is that element or that element, you know, like the thing that latched you onto A Plague Tale: Innocence was those grimdark elements. They were like, oh fuck yeah, there's a bit of grimdark fantasy here. But some people might not describe that entire experience as grimdark. Someone else might feel it's like, no, that was
It's a horror.
It was a horror game. And then I remember we had that discussion. Actually, people did comment going, it's not a horror game. It's a survival game, but it's not a horror game. You know, so people will. It depends on what you kind of latch on to.
Well, sure, shit ain't a walk in the park.
No, but I guess like in the realm of say horror games, they're thinking of like the gameplay of a Silent Hill or a Resident Evil, and they're like, it doesn't play like that, so it's not in that genre. But then
Now, Silent Hill, now would that be grimdark or what would that be?
that has to be.
That's psychological horror, but
But it's got grimdark elements though.
Resident
It's
Evil
pretty hopeless.
4 and Resident Evil 8
Yeah.
could possibly. They're not grimdark, but there's like
No.
elements of them, right? The village of Resident Evil 4, being a regular person in that village.
Yes, I hear
Your
what you're
world is like there's you're doing all this stuff for hope, but it's hopeless. Because
Right.
you're worshipping this dude and you're sacrificing your body to become all kinds of crazy shit.
saying. Yes.
That's quite
This
grim.
is where grimdark starts meeting. You know, I can't help but now start finding where they're bleeding into each other.
Yeah.
And grimdark now starts meeting Lovecraftian horror a little bit, because now I'm thinking of now I'm thinking of Dead Space, and I'm thinking of the regular Joes who are worshippers of the marker.
Yeah.
What are they called again? The
Oh, I was just playing a game recently enough.
what's the religion in Dead Space called? Lads.
I can't remember. I don't know. Was it ever actually like? Is it mentioned?
Well,
100%.
In the remake, it's a really big thing. Isaac Clarke's mother joined the cult and she like died and stuff. So he's like really
He's anti
he's
that.
really
Yeah.
anti.
But it's really like they normalize it in such a way where it's like Eric, seriously, what the fuck are they called in Dead Space? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, there's certain. I think there's
You
definitely
keep talking. I'll look into this.
It's
elements of grimdark in Dead Space.
Mm.
Definitely, but I think like so one of there's like two moments or there's a moment in Death Stranding which I kind of think goes into slightly grimdark territory, which is
Cool.
now that is a Lovecraftian horror game.
Unitology.
Unitology.
Unitologists. Fucking hell, why is that so hard?
Yes, that's what I was trying to think of. Anyway, yes.
The trenches moment, where you're kind of going through the guy's various different beaches.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Cliff, isn't it?
Cliff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cliff Unger.
And
something
the
like
various
that. Somehow
beach-
I remember that, but not fucking unitology.
The various beaches he has is like going through the various different like wars. And I think the first one in particular, where you're kind of it's basically just a third person version of Nazi zombies. Do you remember Derek?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're going through the trenches trying to hunt down him,
Yeah.
while his soldiers are trying to hunt you down.
And they are kind of like they're dead people basically. They are zombies.
With guns.
And Nazi zombies mode itself as well is kind of somewhat got some of that aesthetic to it, the grimdark aesthetic.
That's an interesting one you bring up, because that's now, it's not really in the core mechanics of the storytelling, I suppose.
No. Yeah.
Especially not the very first map, because the first map was fight zombies in a building, like. But it kind of gives the player that sort of hopelessness, because they're like, oh boy, I wonder what round I can get to, and then you die at like 6 or something because the game doesn't work well.
Yeah,
But, no, I'm
you're
joking,
going in it knowing you're going to die.
at some point, yeah. But you have the hope that you're going to get really further than last time.
All horde modes are grimdark experiences.
Yeah, horde mode.
To anything. It's like the myth of Sisyphus. You know that one? Is it Sisyphus? The guy who syphilis.
You mean Sisyphitness?
I think it's Sisyphus. I could be wrong.
It is Sisyphus, the guy with the rock. Yeah.
Yeah, he pushes the boulder up the hill forever, and he'll never get it to the top, but he keeps trying anyway.
Bro.
Yeah. That's why like I seen one where it had like he set up now a stand where he's got a banner called Sissa Fitness and he's like really built because he was pushing the rock, so now he's got other people joining in to push the rock.
Amazing. I love that.
Well, I just want to go
Yeah.
back to a Plague Tale because I never got Eric because you mentioned that as like, and
You're the one who
I
brought it
think
up,
that
yeah.
is the perfect. Only because that is exactly what I got out of the game. Was there a moment in particular where you went, "This is Grimdark"?
Yeah, so Skyrim, right? No, it would actually probably be the same moment Chris is talking about, which is when you're in the church, you're getting close to the end, and
Yeah,
it is that
it does feel like you're on a
the
space Hulk, doesn't it? It's just like,
it's Space Hulk. The guys are sacrificing themselves for these rats,
yeah,
so that their archbishop, wherever the fuck it was, the leader of the Inquisition,
Yeah.
can gain power, and wasn't
Well, the
this
fact that they end
the
up
holy message?
yeah, and they end up justifying the rats, which are actually just like they're just plagued rats, like you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like and there's a fantasy element to it, but
They're
it's
calling them
based on
angels, is it?
Yeah, he
yeah, yeah,
refers to them
yeah.
as his angels, and
He ends
and
up
I like.
seeing it as like no, this is a cleansing from God. They're here to cleanse. Like that's the purpose of them.
And I
Even
think
though you have to take precautions that they don't kill you, and you have to like keep them in cages and control them basically. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like your logic is so fucking
Now,
flawed.
is
Like
he justifying his religious belief? Because in order for these to exist on in my time, even though I believe in this one thing, do I need to now cope my belief? Or is he justifying his want to use this as a weapon by using his belief?
I think both
Yes.
simultaneously.
The answer
no, I
is
do
yes.
though. I do think it's both. I think it is that one he had to as a character wrestle with why are these atrocities happening
Yeah.
when we have been so faithful?
Hmm.
It must be God, and he must be mad. And if God is mad, then so am I, and I must use the gift he has given us, kind of a thing. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I think it comes from a play. Obviously, at first there has to be a moment of why is this happening, and then him coming to his own conclusions that are obviously so fucked. Like,
And I also love the I think the first point you ever meet him, he's sitting on a throne like he's Darth Sidious, but
they
they're like
carry him in, don't they? On like,
yeah, so
yeah,
carry him in or they carry him off, but before that they're actually like injecting stuff into him, like some weird like steampunk style medicine apparatus to kind of keep him alive or something like that. I think they're pumping him with blood or something like that into him.
hmm
And like even that itself reminds me of because he's like the leader of the Inquisition being infamous for torturing everyone who went against the church, which
yeah,
science would have been one of those things, and yet now they're using science to keep him alive, which I find is like very much in those very hopeless stories. You do have that higher power who are very much hypocrites. They you know, you can't use that,
Yeah, so
but
it's
I
almost
will,
like,
and it's
yeah,
okay if I do.
there's like an incompetent person. This is everything that's happening right now is making me question my shit. That's making me uncomfortable. So therefore, you get punished
Yeah,
because you're. I don't like this. You're making me uncomfortable. I don't want to think about it. Let's not have this conversation. Die.
something about that always reminded me as well of, and this is obviously a much, much, much lighter game in tone, and certainly not. It's not a grim, dark game, right?
that's what you think. Wait till you mention it. Then we'll
But
start fighting those.
Final Fantasy X had that thing of the
I don't
religious
know. No, there's.
organization. What were you gonna say?
I don't know. Finish your sentence. I'll make my point
I was
after.
just saying, like the religious organization are using all the things that are forbidden to the
Hmm.
general folk, but they're like, it's okay for us to do it, but not for you to do it. That element of hypocrisy of yeah, but we're divine because we've decided we are, and we've already made up our minds that nobody else is.
Mhm.
Um, and the rules don't apply to us, but they apply to everyone else, and that's a very hopeless world, actually. Like, obviously,
That's
it's
the bit
not.
I was about to bring up. You sure it's not grim dark? You know, you
Well,
go on your
it's
the people go on their pilgrimage to sacrifice themselves to get 10 years of peace before the beast comes back. That's pretty grim dark, man. Like,
it's
you know what I mean?
and it is a dystopian society,
It is
and to
something
live as a
else.
normal person, now, you're making a good argument. Maybe on surface it doesn't look like it is because of how happy everything is. You know, the ha 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 takes away from the grimdark elements that really Final
Yeah.
Fantasy X
But
has.
coming back, right? Bringing it back, right? Full circle to like their second or third episode, I think we ever did. We talked about Final Fantasy X. And I talked about how it was a pretty looking world juxtaposed against a hopeless ordeal of
Hmm.
what
Suffering.
they're
Yeah.
of suffering of what they're living in. Like,
Right.
especially the moment when they find out that, like, oh no, you're gonna die. But he'll
Yeah,
get it.
Eric's on to something here. Like, you know, maybe Final Fantasy X is a grimdark game that just doesn't look like one.
Yeah. And now,
I
if you
mean,
look at Uncharted now, you know.
no, yeah, stop now, stop. But but like, you do have like one of the major villains being Maester Seymour, and his whole drive is I'm gonna wipe out the world because life is suffering, and we'd all be better off dead. Like he is nihilism as a character.
Yeah.
I'm sold.
It's definitely one of those things. What we haven't included in our conversation are the obvious ones: Vermintide, Dawn of War,
Yeah,
fucking
of course,
whatever
yeah.
amount of Warhammer games that exist. But
all of the Warhammer games.
point I suppose to conclude the episode with is that here's a genre that is we can almost identify the elements when we see them.
Mm-hmm.
As Chris just pointed out, that it gets a little bit trickier when you actually try to use the definition of it.
Yeah.
But you can identify it when you see it. You know it when you see it.
Mm.
There just isn't actually enough of these type of genres in gaming.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Like there's elements. As we just pointed out, there are elements outside of Warhammer. There isn't like, oh, this is a grimdark game.
But even at that, with Warhammer,
Mm-hmm.
it depends on the game. I wouldn't say straight out, because Warhammer is a grimdark world, so the lore is grimdark.
Mm-hmm.
The game itself isn't always. It really depends on which game you play, because some of them are like some of the RTS games and everything. There's no real sense of like this is a grimdark game. It's just that you're like, yes, like it's a grimdark world. The lore is grimdark, but the game itself isn't like.
Well, I
making
think
me feel hopeless or anything. I actually feel like I'm gonna whoop these guys' ass.
Yeah, but I think that is right.
You know?
Okay, so I think that is kind of part of it too, right? It's not that you as the player have to feel hopeless. It's that you're in a world that is.
Which is why I think Eric was onto something when he said Final Fantasy X could be grimdark.
But we both know that's not true.
The only element that I can use as an argument against it is Blitzball.
Sure.
That is the only thing they have that makes them happy.
That starts to now bleed into cyberpunk mentality,
Jesus
where they
Christ.
use entertainment to distract
Technology
themselves from
to
the
distract
hopeless.
themselves
Yeah.
from the hopelessness of society.
Yeah, and actually another one popped in my head of like a hopelessness, not with Final Fantasy X, but like The Matrix.
Yeah, it's still cyberpunk. But anyway, I think the
I don't think we're going with this.
Stop it.
well, I think with some of the examples we've mentioned, and why I probably wouldn't classify Final Fantasy X there, is that there are elements. You got to admit there are places in Spira that you're kind of like, I'd like to visit there.
Oh yeah, I'd love to visit Spirit.
I don't think you can say that about a Plague Tale.
No.
Yeah, I know. I was half joking. I do think that there is thematically elements that are very interesting because you would never ever associate that game with Grimdark. When you start finding some of those themes, you go like, it's fascinating how colorful that game is, but yet how hopeless.
Yeah.
Its story is.
Yeah.
But obviously, no, Final Fantasy X is a fantasy game.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, like it's as grim dark as like, I don't know, a Cold War movie. You know, like
what Cold War movie could be pretty grim.
Could be pretty grimdark.
That's
Yeah.
a where
but
in the
Especially if you're East Germany.
yeah, but like, so wait, if you're in the world of Final Fantasy X, you're in Besaid and you're fine, but Kilika is getting ruined.
Depends on where you are.
Where you are. So like a Cold War story. And then back to The Matrix. right?
Come on, Eric. Don't let it go.
I'm gonna fight this one.
Go on then.
Because you're talking about this sort of grimness, and World War aesthetic, World War One aesthetic. So
Sure.
I understand what you mean with the actual movies, but do you remember the Animatrix?
Jesus
Go
Christ.
fucking way out here now.
Right?
And the second Renaissance story arc.
You can find a singular moment in an Animatrix episode and go, therefore, the Matrix is Grimdark.
Yeah, exactly.
Over
I keep
Cyberpunk.
going.
Go on.
I love it. I love it.
The actual moment when the war is starting and they're fighting, the humans are fighting in the trenches, and there is that hopelessness where they get to the point where they even black out the sky and they're like drugging themselves up to be like, yeah, let's go kill machines, and they're just fucking psychotically charging out with their machines. Like, it's pretty grim.
Yeah,
it's pretty grim.
You could make an entire Grimdark movie based on that one moment.
You could actually, and it
Yeah.
would be class. It's
Would be
actually such a good.
Yeah.
It'd be
I used to
great.
find those two episodes very boring, but
But
on
that
rewatching them, I was
moment, yeah, it's very cool. The
I'd
yeah,
actually-
the
like, the whole fucking thing is class.
the lengths that mankind will go to for survival.
Yeah, they just absolutely doom the world.
Stop now, because I start getting into like, so is The Last of Us? Is The Last of Us Grimdark? I don't think it is.
The Resident Evil, the W.S. Anderson Resident Evil movies before 6 are grim dark because it's just hopeless.
Well, they make me feel hopeless when I watch them.
Well, we've
Sorry.
always
Yeah, we're joking now.
we have been able to identify, like, in many different episodes, like, what's the best horror game, what's the best shooter game, what's the best fucking whatever the case may be, fantasy game.
So we have to do it here,
This I don't think you can. I don't. That's what I'm saying. Outside of Warhammer, here's a genre that I think it deserves exploration.
I don't. Yeah, I hear you. I don't think we can say what what is the best, but I think we can, as I love to put to Eric, say what our personal favorite grimdark game is. Not maybe for the entire experience of it, but from what we've talked about, what game gives us the best like grimdark experience, even if it's only in a moment. Maybe it's a Space Marine game, maybe it's Dante's Inferno, maybe it's Blasphemous. But of the games we've talked about, what would be your favorite grimdark game to date? Noting that you're like, but they do need to make more. Come on.
Who's going first?
I'll go in first, and I'll say A Plague Tale: Innocence.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I think that's my favorite of what we've talked about. That encapsulates that feeling of pure hopelessness, and it never ever, like, even when they give you moments of light, because they do, I never trust them, and that bled into the second game, which arguably is not as grim or as dark as the first game, and I still didn't trust them because I was traumatized by my experiences of the first game, which to me, I think I have said is at the time when we did the episode of Favorite Game of 2019, I hadn't played Plague Tale: Innocence yet. And when I played Plague Tale: Innocence, I was like, I need to re-edit that episode because it's my favorite game from 2019. I think it's fucking spectacular. So,
Go on, Adam.
I'm hoping it's going to be Space Marine 2 when I eventually get around to playing it, but at this moment in time, I would also say A Plague Tale: Innocence.
yeah, hey,
Yeah, I was going to cop out and say Warhammer 40k, but
full
really-
stop. Like, or
yeah, just this entirety of it. But then
Games
as you
in general,
stated-
sure, but yeah, video game.
Yeah, see, that's a video game because, yeah, as Chris pointed out, those games kind of do lack the grimdark. So yeah, probably would have to be Plague Tale: Innocence.
there we go. There we go, lads. We need more of it. That's what we're. If all three of us can only pick the same one, and maybe it is the best at what it does, but maybe it's just to say that there's not enough of those experiences. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we need to pitch an idea.
Ghost spiders.
Yes.
Grimdark ghost
spiders.
spiders. That would, now in fairness, that would be pretty hopeless. You got spiders that climb through walls and you have no idea where they are.
Imagine living. I don't want to live in that.
Can't
world.
step on it.
Yeah, that'd be horrible.
Yeah.
Every spider you ever killed comes back as a ghost.
Fuck.
Okay, so that concludes this episode. Our exploration into the grim dark genre in video games. If there's any obvious ones that we're missing out on, please let us know in the comments down below. Or if you're listening to us on audio platforms, get in touch with us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at The Brothers Take. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and click the notification bell for all future content. And if you want to hear more suggestions, kind of similar enough topics to like this, please give us your suggestions down below. Until next time, we will see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.